This thing is worth a full-on documentary someday. So much hype and potential and then nothing. But today I will be giving you the best deep dive I can, as brief a time frame as I can. For my standards anyways, I know this video doesn't look super short. Anyways, this is the Toshiba Nuon, a game console that is only technically a game console and a failure in pretty much every sense of the word. Welcome to Stuff We Play, home of everything weird and retro. This is a story featuring the Atari Jaguar, thrift stores, fancy light shows, and game consoles that can't even play official games. This is the story of VM Labs and the Nuon line of gaming hardware, and ultimately, how it failed. Before we dive into the story of the Nuon, I'd like to mention today's sponsor. This video is brought to you in part by PCBWay.com. Take advantage of services ranging from 3D printing to CNCing to PCB design and printing, of course. From small orders to big, massive batches of PCBs, they have you covered for all your PCB related needs. This includes a variety of PCB designs from the ever-growing PCBWay community. Game Boy cartridges, controller adapters, and more. There's a little something for every project here. Check out PCBWay.com using the link in the description below and let them power up your next maker project today. And with that, let's get back to the Nuon. The story of the Nuon, oddly enough, starts at Atari. In 1993, Atari released their final game console, the Jaguar. And 2 years later, a CD attachment was released for the unit, the Jaguar CD. Yeah, supposedly 64-bit gaming and CDs. This truly was the mid-90s. Now, the Jaguar CD was Atari's only ever piece of CD gaming hardware, and to put it lightly, it crashed and burned. Only 11 officially released games, build quality issues, limited availability, and to add insult to injury, it looked like a toilet. But a few key players in the Nuon story did get their start working on the Jaguar and Jaguar CD, namely esteemed game designer Jeff Minter and Atari Jaguar mastermind John Matheson. By 1995, Atari was a sinking ship. They declared bankruptcy in 1996 after a past decade that was, quite frankly, a bloodbath, though that's a story for another time. It's perhaps easy to see why the likes of Minter and Matheson then could be convinced to jump ship to a small startup called VM Labs in Los Altos, California. These weren't the only Atari alum at VM Labs either. The founder and head honcho was a former Atari vice president named Richard Miller, and he had an idea for a new game console, one that would be leaps and bounds more capable than anything Nintendo, Sega, Atari, or Sony could come up with, or so he claimed. And at this early point, he'd even secured funding from Motorola. Yeah, that Motorola. Work on this new system would progress secretly, with it ultimately bearing a name that felt just as secretive. Project X. Details would be drip-fed throughout the 90s, and hype would build, and finally, a tentative release date was given. 1998. Here's what was said about Project X in a January 1998 issue of Next Generation magazine.
In response to speculation that Project X is a 64-bit system, Miller reveals that no, it isn't. He goes on to comment, "The argument that more bits are better doesn't hold water. This doesn't mean that we're not more bits, we are. But it's a crazy game to get into. We got into this with the Jaguar and it was terrible." What he does offer is the claim that Project X is substantially more powerful than PlayStation or Nintendo 64.
These are some big claims for the mid-90s, but perhaps to be expected. I mean, that same year in Japan, the Sega Dreamcast was released, and that was ultimately a leap forward in power from the original PlayStation, and it seemed like Project X had what it took. As time went on, more details came out. DVD support for one, a huge addition for an era where VHS was still everywhere and DVD players were seen as a luxury item. There's also a PS1 style system case, even a demo for a gorgeous arcade style game called Tempest 3000, a sequel to the critically acclaimed Jaguar game Tempest 2000. The only really odd announcement was that VM Labs wasn't going to produce the hardware themselves. No, instead Nuon-compatible systems were going to be made by the likes of Toshiba and RCA. Now, perhaps this isn't so odd in retrospect. I mean, VM Labs only had at any given time 30 to 50 employees. This wasn't the first time something like this had been attempted in gaming either. Earlier in the 90s, a line of consoles called the 3DO were released. And like Project X, these were a set of standardized hardware that was licensed to a variety of companies, namely Panasonic and Goldstar, as a way to try to standardize game consoles in the same way movies were standardized via formats like VHS. And in the late 90s, there were even rumors of a successor system called the M2, but that never happened, because the original 3DO failed. Really failed. Hard. As companies couldn't recoup hardware costs by selling software due to how licensing worked, 3DO systems cost up to $700 at launch in the States, compared to only a couple hundred or less for a SNES or Sega Genesis, and it's easy to see how it bombed. But VM Labs apparently thought they could do it better, but what they could not do was meet that 1998 release date. Indeed, the first Nuon systems wouldn't see release until 2000. And yeah, at some point the name was switched from Project X to, well, Nuon. There are two models initially released. One was the Samsung Guustavv DVD in 2000, and the other one was the Toshiba SD2300 here. Goodness, these names absolutely roll off the tongue, don't they? And to call this thing a game console is perhaps not right. I mean, look at it. It's so square and boxy and has all the grace and charm of a VCR. The Nuon didn't end up being a traditional game console at all. Instead, it was a special chip that could be added to DVD players to allow them to play special Nuon-compatible games. And no one really knew how to market it. That same year, the PlayStation 2 released, and it was a smash hit. Huge success. And it makes sense. On one hand, it was the successor to the massively popular original PlayStation, which was still selling super well. And the PS2 had 29 different titles available at launch alone. Oh, and it also had built-in DVD player features. A lot of people ended up buying the PS2 because it was just a cheap, perfectly functional DVD player. But the funny thing is, never once do I recall the PS2 being marketed as a DVD player. It was always just a game console that happened to have DVD player functionality. Thankfully, unlike the 3DO, Toshiba and Samsung systems weren't massively expensive. The Toshiba model here was $300 at launch, the same price as the PS2. But again, the PS2 had 29 different games available at launch, along with full backwards compatibility with the PS1. The Nuon, on the other hand, ended up with 8 titles. Not at launch either, I mean total. And one of them was exclusive to South Korea. And these things are region locked, mind you. I'd love to show off the likes of the aforementioned Tempest 3000 Merlin Racing, which was a Diddy Kong racing clone that's apparently an ungodly pile of garbage, but I don't own a single game for the Nuon. They're pretty impossible to find, at least from my experiences, and doubly as impossible to find are controllers for this damn thing. The only ones I've ever seen on eBay are over $200. And yes, systems aren't cheap either, but like, I found mine for $10 at a thrift store. At least I can watch Jim Carrey's The Grinch on it. The component out is pretty nice and also apparently has a really fancy music visualizer on it. This was designed by Jeff Minter himself. It's an upgraded version of the visualizer found in the Jaguar CD. That's what you're seeing on screen right now, by the way. As a fun fact, to use the one on the Nuon, or at least with the Toshiba player, you need the original remote. My system came from a Savers. It was mixed in with all the DVD players there. It's a miracle it even has a power cable. I think the Nuon's flaws really do come back to marketing, as from the looks of it, from what I've seen on YouTube anyways, it wasn't bad hardware. The PS2 is a next-gen game console that just happened to play DVDs. The Nuon systems though all look and feel like a bunch of standard DVD players that can just happen to play games. As you would probably expect, the Nuon really did not do great. I can't find the exact sales numbers, seeing how it regularly pops up on top 10 lists about obscure game consoles, that perhaps gives a good idea. Yet it still managed to get a surprising number of hardware variants. There's the Toshiba here, yes, but also there were 6 different Nuon-compatible DVD players made by Samsung. There are 2 each from Motorola and RCA as well, but weirdly enough, the RCA units can't actually play official Nuon games, or so I've heard. I mean, what's the point then? Well, Nuon DVD players also had a bunch of advanced DVD watching features, such as fancy zooms and stuff you could do, and this was used by a grand total of 4 movie releases. And that's apparently all you can do with the RCA units. Well, that and homebrew games. Oh yeah, apparently VM Labs tried to be way supportive of homebrew, though I'm not sure how much stuff was actually made by small devs for this platform, especially as not all Nuon players could run homebrew. The closest thing I can think of to a Nuon homebrew release is the Iron Soldier 3 Songbird release from a few years back. Iron Soldier 3 is a sequel to Iron Soldier 2, which yes, was a Jaguar game, how did you guess? It actually got an official release, but had to be recalled due to a bug that only let it work on certain Nuon models. As far as I can tell, it was never actually reissued, which is probably a good reason why it soon became the rarest game for all the Nuon. Well, until Songbird Productions got a hold of it, and now you can snag a copy for $80 or so. It's cool to see the Nuon getting some sort of support nowadays. Maybe we'll get some third-party controller adapters, cause yeah, the Nuon pads are not only stupidly expensive, but also have proprietary connectors. Even a Nuon to USB adapter would just be amazing. And I'm really happy to know I'm not the only person talking about this thing. I actually first learned about the Nuon's existence thanks to a re-res video, which is one of my favorite vids on this channel. Also, literally the day I found my Toshiba Nuon, I watched a cleaning video from Adam Korlick. Which, by the way, Adam, if you're watching, someone actually watched one of your Nuon cleaning videos to actually figure out how to open up and clean a Nuon. I know you probably weren't expecting that. The Nuon did not end with a bang though, but with a whimper. It sold terribly, as you can see from that single-digit game count. VM Labs would be eaten up by a larger company in 2002, and the Nuon would fade from the market shortly after. It wouldn't be the last time the 3DO style licensing format was attempted in gaming though. In 2005, Canadian company Zappit Games would release a glorified DVD player that could play video games called the Game Wave. And though that, in its own way, was a disaster, it's a story I've already told in depth before. Also, before I get yet another message, it's just, hey Jamie, what's worse, the Game Wave or the Nuon? Y'all, at least all the games in the Nuon are fully fledged, games with AI and stuff. The Game Wave truly is just a glorified DVD player. So, I don't really have much more to add on the Nuon here. I think I might come back to this at some point and do an Art of Failure documentary if I can set up some interviews and whatnot, but I think I covered everything I wanted to. Well, besides the fact that the Toshiba Nuon says hello and goodbye when you turn it on and off, that's really charming. But on that note, that's it for today's look at the VM Labs Nuon, specifically this Toshiba one here that I found at a thrift store. This thing is so rare and obscure that I never expected to come across one. And the fact that I not only got one, but that I got it for $10 as well, it's certainly something I'm weirdly proud of, So yeah, that's it for this look at the Nuon. If you enjoyed it, maybe back me on Patreon for as low as $1 a month to get regular updates on videos, early content, exclusive content, and your name at the end of my videos with these folks here. I have some really cool stuff in the works right now, including an Art of Failure documentary on the Pokemon Live musical with a friend of mine, and a rather different kind of deep dive into the ice climbers. Yeah, those ice climbers. So on that note, thank you very much for watching, stay classy, and I'll see you next time.